Today is Friday, October 30th, 2020, and today I'm thinking about a few different things: masks, modern day churches, and how everything these days is so plastic and phony, but it's always been like this. And if you read the Gospels, you'll see that Jesus would go into the temples and would preach, and people would be shocked at the things that he had to say. So shocked that there were always groups of people trying to get Jesus to trip up so that they could stone him. And that just shows you how extreme the things were that Jesus was saying. But then when you think of a modern day 501c3 church, they don't want to say anything that might potentially offend a single person. And so what you inevitably get is a bunch of just hot air. They'll talk about love, love, love for hours, and they'll just focus in on one little verse from something that Paul wrote. And so I wasn't surprised. I wasn't surprised when I was looking up masks and churches. I was not surprised to see stuff like this. What would the Apostle Paul say about wearing face masks? As if what Paul has to say is the most important thing. And this is how 501c3 churches work. So I didn't know about Paul, Saul, all of that stuff. I wasn't raised in a church. I didn't read the Bible when I was young. I came to this stuff all when I was much older. But part of me always knew that churches were super phony. So it actually was really a relief to me when I realized that most modern churches are so focused on Paul that they don't even talk about Jesus half the time. They're so focused on Paul. What do you care about what Paul had to say? Shouldn't you care about what Jesus had to say? More importantly, shouldn't you care about the life that Jesus lived and how Jesus acted and follow that, rather than listen to what Paul had to say? But almost always you get these people that you'll see that they constantly refer to Pauline doctrine instead of talking about Jesus and Jesus's words and Jesus's actions. Who cares what Paul had to say? That's what I say. Apostle who? Jesus never called Paul an apostle. So I was not surprised to see people just straight away appealing to Paul. This is written by some pastor person, I don't know. But all these people, they're there just to reinforce the status quo. I don't think that this is what churches are even supposed to be. Jesus told us, what do we have to gain by being nice to our friends? We're supposed to go out there and find the people who are lost still. You're not serving anybody by meeting every week at the same place with the same people, patting each other on the back. That is self-serving, and that's not what Jesus did. Jesus didn't go to the same temple every week and say the same thing every week. That's not how it's supposed to work. And these people, they're just there to reinforce the status quo, to talk about Paul all the time, to sell you a plastic, phony version of Christianity, and among other things, for sure, what these just bad masonry churches are meant to do. Just time wasters. Your time is just better spent doing anything, basically, than going to one of these places. Does the Bible talk about wearing a mask during a pandemic? You would think the answer to that is no, but you would be wrong. The Bible has a lot to say about it, actually. I'm sure some of you are reading this saying, boo, I'm never going to wear a mask. Y'all are my people. I do not want to wear one. Many of you may not be attending church in person yet because people aren't wearing masks, which scares you. I guess they're trying to describe the two different types of people. Some that are like, I'm never wearing a mask, and then some people that are scared to go places because people aren't wearing masks. Anyways, you never go into public without wearing a mask. Y'all are awesome. It's so hard. So I guess he's like congratulating the people that are scared of doing anything. Y'all are awesome. Instead of telling them the truth, which is this is just a big psyop, coronavirus is actually just connected with the common cold. You are controlled by people who make you scared of nonsense. Instead of just telling people the truth, they buy into it and they're telling people, good job for being scared of what the TV tells you. Is that what Jesus would say? Would Jesus say that the boogeyman on the TV telling you what to be afraid of, that's really important and you need to buy into it? Or did Jesus tell us to reject the things of this world and to not care what people think? These pastors should be saying, the truth is that this is just a big psyop and the masks are bad. They're probably just not even good for you. They're probably going to cause a worse cold and flu season than ever because people are wearing masks all the time, and hand sanitizer is not good for you. And instead of just telling you truths like this, They just try to sell whatever narrative is being pushed by the system. That's why they all talk about outer space and dinosaurs. That's why they all support this mask thing, because they're a part of that. Anyways, it's so hard for me to keep it on and not mess with it every 5 seconds, because it's a joke and because you know it's a joke. They just go straight to Paul. In chapter 8 of what? In chapter 8, Paul tells the believers there's not a problem to eat meat sacrificed to idols. Okay, I have a big problem with this. Well, I guess it's of Corinthians. In chapter 8, Paul tells the believers there's not a problem to eat meat sacrificed to idols. He's talking about the meat that people would bring to sacrifice to the Greek gods like Apollo, Poseidon, and Athena at the temples. Then people could buy that meat from the temple and eat it. Paul tells them certainly don't eat the meat at the temple, but feel free to buy it and take it home and eat it. Like the place where you eat it is what matters. Is that what Paul is saying? That the place where you eat it is what matters. Okay, now, what people should always do is go to Jesus' words. Jesus told us it's not what you put into your mouth that matters, but what comes out of your mouth. So that could be an explanation for why, but still, it would be, if you are dying of hunger and the only way that you can get sustenance is to buy this meat sacrificed to idols, then I think it might be permissible. But what Paul is telling people here is go ahead and go do this obviously satanic thing. As long as you bring it home, it's okay, but don't eat it there. That is just so obviously wrong and phony to me. So I'll just say I eat pork and stuff. I really don't think that what you eat is necessarily evil. When I think of this sacrificing food to idols, I think of when I go into a Thai place, they have this golden statue and pictures of their ancestors and oranges and stuff. I don't think that you're going to hell because you eat at a Thai restaurant that has something like that. However, I just think it's really strange that Paul is telling people, oh, go ahead and buy that clearly satanic stuff. And of course, this stuff is way more obviously satanic than going to a Thai restaurant that follows some Buddhist thing. These are temples to Apollo, Poseidon, and Athena, and they're selling. It's just so much more clearly satanic. And Paul's saying, go ahead and do it. Just make sure you bring it home first, as if that makes a difference. Anyways, I just thought this was crazy. And whatever. We can have a community worshiping the Lord and sitting under his teaching, but you're talking about Paul all the time, so that's kind of interesting. I want our entire church family to feel safe coming back in person. I also want unbelievers to feel welcome, safe, and have the opportunity to respond to the gospel, which is kind of interesting because earlier in this, they tried to say that, oh, if you're not a believer and you think that the masks are phony, then you won't wear them. And I think he was trying to say that, like, believers are better people because even though they think they're stupid, they'll wear them anyways. And it's like, I think you're just saying that believers buy more into the status quo system. They don't want to seem like an outsider, but Jesus was like the ultimate outsider. And anyways, so here, I also want unbelievers to feel welcome and safe, but according to this person's own logic, the unbelievers would feel more welcome and safe if your church was actually standing up for the obvious truths. Like, hey, look, this is a big psyop and a very phony, and wearing masks is stupid. I think that you would have a better chance of getting unbelievers that way. Anyways, my challenge is the same one Paul gives to the church of Corinth in chapter 11, right after he reiterates his point on Christian freedom. Imitate, also the word here, imitate. Although maybe in KJV he says follow me as I also follow Christ. I don't know. But here it's just the word imitate. It's like a bad copy. Imitate me as I also imitate Christ. Paul is the ultimate middleman. We don't need middlemen between us and Jesus Christ. And anyways. Will you join me in surrendering our freedoms in Jesus? What about this is in Jesus? Jesus didn't tell us that we have to listen to what the stores tell us to do and what the governors tell us to do. And I mean, I'll just put in here that I wear a mask when I go to the grocery store just because it's mandated in my area, and the people that I live with, where I live, people absolutely will go psycho on you if you don't do that. So I just don't want to start a big fight, but I'm not going to tell people that it's a good thing to do it. And yeah, of course, You should always tell people the truth. But the only reason I wear one is because the places where I shop at, they literally would not serve me if I didn't do that. So I don't think I'm surrendering my freedoms in Jesus. I feel like I'm doing really dumb theater to appease the NWO machine. But these people will just paint it out to be whatever they want. Jesus would wear a mask. These people, they talk as if they know what Jesus would do. It's ridiculous. I'm confident that Jesus would wear a face mask because I know he wouldn't be swayed by any of the reasons I hear people giving for not wearing one. Yes, they are uncomfortable and inconvenient. Yes, they make you look foolish. Okay, he's saying that Jesus coming in the flesh was inconvenient and uncomfortable. I don't know, inconvenient. Covering up his divinity with frail and imperfect human flesh. Jesus was perfect. I don't agree with that. And clearly, and this too, this person's trying to say that Jesus looked foolish, which I don't agree with at all. So inconvenience and discomfort weren't a deterrent for Jesus, and clearly looking foolish wasn't either. I do not agree with you that Jesus looked foolish. I don't think so at all. These are pastors. They go off to seminary, they get told a bunch of lies, and then they keep perpetuating the lies, and they think that they're experts. Nobody should think that they're an expert on faith. These people are phonies, and they think that because they have a title and because they went to seminary that they're more godly, and they know they honestly think that they know what Jesus would do today, and they just have such arrogance when it comes to that kind of thing. St. Paul. An appeal to Paul. They just had to talk about Paul, I guess. As St. Paul writes, the message of the cross has always been foolishness. Do you agree with that? Do you agree that the message of the cross has always been foolishness, or does it seem like Paul is a fool and a phony? Jesus didn't care if he looked like a fool. Jesus never once looked like a fool. Never. Jesus never looked like a fool. This stuff just kind of angers me. Oh, this was the person who said that if you aren't a follower of Jesus, believing it's a waste of time will probably stop you from masking up. But if you are Christian, you should be wearing a mask. They always try to shame people. They love to try to pretend that they're a better Christian because X, Y, Z, and then shame people. Oh, you're not a Christian if... And I love this too. This is a big red flag. I could quote you lots of scripture to back this up, and then they don't quote a single scripture. This happens all the time. People come out of the woodworks and say all sorts of things. The amount of times that they actually support with scripture is so few and far between. These people just talk they just say whatever they want to say, and they just say, oh, I have tons of scripture that could back this up. But anyways, some of these things there is scripture to back up, but it's all Pauline stuff. Scriptures teaching believers to voluntarily limit our freedoms for the sake of others. Scriptures about obeying local authorities. All of that stuff is Pauline. And I know some people that get turned off of Christianity because of Paul stuff. They say all of our governments are satanic, and yet the Bible tells us that all of the governments are ordained in God, or something like that. I'm paraphrasing. I don't know exactly what Paul says, but there is some Pauline stuff where Paul comes out and says, oh, listen to all your governments. They're great. They're all from God. If they weren't from God, they wouldn't have that power. And it's that bad logic, that bad Old Testament logic that people had. Oh, you're rich. God must love you. But Jesus came and told us the opposite. And here about Paul told people to be phonies, training about becoming all things to all people. Paul told people to be a complete phony. All things to all people, so that by all means. And conforming to local customs in order to share salvation. There's nothing wrong with following customs, but that doesn't mean that you need to just go along with everything. But it all boils down to this. It doesn't matter what you believe about wearing masks. It matters what those around you believe about wearing masks. But those who believe the reason the government officials and scientists give us for wearing masks, those people look at you and think, that person doesn't care if I die. Why aren't these spiritual leaders telling these people that they have nothing to fear and that this is all a hoax, a psyop? And it's because they're just a part of the system. They're shilling for the beast system. And maybe some of these people, they think that they're doing good, but how can they not tell that they're totally buying into this satanic world? You're not supposed to buy into the world. You're not supposed to care about what the people that have the high seats in the synagogues think of you. Jesus did not buy into the system and give himself, say that he's a pastor and set up a church and go to that church every Sunday and do that kind of thing. That's not how Jesus acted at all. The bottom line for Christians is this: these people will talk on behalf of all Christians as if they are the ultimate betrayer of what Christians need to do. Even if you believe that the fear is not justified, the fear is still real. Okay, but shouldn't you have some sort of duty to quell that fear in people, to tell people you're afraid of nothing, you're afraid of the boogeyman, you're afraid of stuff that the TV's telling you, but you won't see that. You'll just see them buy into this to defend the system. Jesus didn't insult or belittle people. You don't have to insult or belittle people, just tell them the truth. Coronavirus, I mean, you could even get into the whole thing of viral theory is very dodgy, very questionable. Do you think that if somebody goes and lives off by themselves that they will never get an infectious disease because they're not around people to have viruses transmitted to them? Of course they can still get colds and still get sick and stuff because this stuff comes from within us. Colds are just a natural process that the body goes through every once in a while. And anyways, it's just a big theme that 501c3 churches out there, they're there to just control the system. It's controlled opposition. They push the system more than they push Jesus Christ. Anyways, I just get sick of reading this stuff. You don't have to mock people who are afraid. Just tell them the truth. What are you afraid of? Because tell them to turn the TV off. There's nothing to be afraid of. Explain to them how they can go open up an old encyclopedia, an old medical thing, and look up coronavirus and see that it's the common cold. And tell them that, yeah, the media is this insane that they'd go out of their way to hype up the common cold and make it seem like this deadly thing. It's a practical way to show that you love your neighbor. It's a practical way to show that you're buying into the fear, the fake fear. We're supposed to fear God, not what the TV tells us. Anyways, I thought this was Kate Murphy, pastor at the Grove. Is Murphy 33? I don't know. But anyways, this is the person that tried to say that looking foolish is a good thing. And I don't agree with that at all. I don't think Jesus ever looked foolish. And yeah, I think that is part of the masks, is to just make a fool of a lot of people. So for all those Paul people out there, it's actually kind of interesting that Paul talks about not covering the head and then says some other strange things. For a man indeed not cover his head, for as much as he is the image and glory of God. And then goes and starts spouting his own ideas that Jesus didn't really talk about. But I thought this was interesting because they were talking about women, but women go ahead and do it. For this cause ought the woman to have power on her head because of the angels. I don't quite even understand what that's talking about, but Paul gives this. Paul even told people to not cover their head, but people will take Pauline stuff because Paul talked all the time about, do whatever people tell you to do. Trust in your government. Do what the government says. Paul talked about that sometimes. So I just think of this all the time. Jesus did not do whatever he was told. Jesus did not follow all the little rules. Jesus broke the rules all the time. So I do not understand how almost every Christian place out there, almost any pastor, they tell you, be a good rule follower, do every little thing that your government tells you to do, and that's not right. You're supposed to stand up for the truth, and that's what this video is about, I guess. It's just so obvious that another way that you can tell all these churches are fake and phony is that they all buy into whatever the current day media sensation is. I mean, another thing too, all the mass shootings that happen at churches show you right there that they're Masonic and part of these psyops. These mass shootings are not real. So the fact that so many of these mass shootings occur at churches, that's a big red flag. They're a part of this psyop Babylonian system. The purpose of the masks is to murder Americans by means of bacterial pneumonia. I agree with this 100% that a big part of the masks is they want this to be the worst cold and flu season ever. They want this to be the worst season for... They're trying to create this pandemic through forcing people to wear masks absurdly. I feel so bad for people that are mandated this stuff by their jobs. And I mean, if I had a job, I don't know, I would just try to do exemptions, and I don't know what I would do. I would just have to quit, I guess, and try to find a job that didn't make me do that. It's not healthy to sit there in a mask all day. That's incredibly unhealthy, and I think a lot of people will get sick from it. Yeah, I mean, where do all these churches, why do they not know that Satan is in control of the governments? How do they not see all the satanic hand signs? How do they not know this information about the spiritual war? These people that are in charge of the churches should be at the top of knowing about spiritual warfare, but they just so blindly, they love popular stuff, they love Hollywood movies, they love popular music. They can't spend like an hour looking into Illuminati stuff, looking into satanic deception. Anyways, let me know what you guys think. They just want theater. It's all about theater. That's it for this video. God bless everyone.